In Israel, around 1100 BC, it was time for a regime change. They'd asked for a king, and Samuel had warned them, be careful what you wish for. Kings and empires bring taxes, conscription of your sons into the military, redistribution of wealth to the powerful, wars, bribery, kidnapping, and abuse of young women into service. It sounds eerily familiar. But Samuel's no king movement never got off the ground. The people of Israel had moved, you see, from faith in a God who could lead them through the wilderness to a denial of God's ability to protect them from their neighbors. Fear had inspired what we might call pathological denial, the opposite of radical acceptance, which we heard about last week. God can't do it, they said. We need a king. So they got Saul and eventually learned what happens when a madman is on the throne. Sounds eerily familiar. It's amazing how a population can remain blind to truths they don't want to see or admit. Pathological denial. So the Lord sends Samuel to anoint a successor to Saul. Samuel is introduced to all the big, strong sons of Jesse, but none of them have the qualities God is looking for. Samuel is reminded not to use the eyes of the world's current political values, but to use the eyes of divine insight. David the young shepherd is brought in. Samuel anoints him, and the long and difficult road to regime change begins. Change in socio-political structures is never quick. It is always costly. David's small and loyal group of followers, all God-fearing people, had to be willing to risk their lives. At the heart of this process in Israel, some 10 centuries before Christ, was a shift of vision. The people had to alter the way they understood appropriate leadership, a shift from warrior to shepherd, from autocratic power to benevolent leadership. We look around our world at the current practices of kingship and we want to say, Samuel, where are you? We need you. So many countries with their autocratic leaders. I want to say, people, can you not see the truth sitting in front of you? How do we interpret the realities in front of us? Radical acceptance or pathological denial? Last October, I'm sure many of you, like us, were sitting in front of your TVs watching the newscasts about Hurricane Melissa, the vast destruction in the Caribbean. You maybe saw the satellite picture of this vast swirling cloud that scientists were telling us was gaining its power from an ocean that was unnaturally warmer thanks to human-caused climate change. Yet another piece of evidence of the catastrophic effects of global warming. But then, I don't know if you remember, the ad break came on for a great, big, powerful pickup truck, gas-driven. I remember thinking to myself, when will we learn to connect the dots? As many of you know, we had a holiday recently in the Puerto Vallarta area. We flew, we burned aviation fuel there and back. We flew home on the Friday before the Sunday violence broke out from the drug cartel. The Mexican federal police had arrested dozens of the leaders of that cartel and killed their boss in the process. Much panic and hand-wringing followed. Questions about drug wars and cartels and violence and tourist safety took over social media. But I heard no one ask the question, why are the drug cartels there in the first place? No one mentioned that the trade in drugs grown in tropical climates, a trade which promises enormous financial gains to the cartels, is fueled by the insatiable appetite for drugs in North America. no one seemed to connect those dots. We're watching with horror and anxiety the military aggression by two well-armed countries in Iran, the escalation that threatens the entire Middle East. That's already pushed a tank of gas in my car from $60 to $96. The excuses for this vary from regime change to nuclear disarming to stopping the deadly response of Iranian leaders to protesters. But surely the real reason is oil. Venezuela was all about oil. The Middle East is all about oil. But I have not heard much commentary pointing to the world's insatiable appetite for petroleum products needed for the manufacture of plastics that are in so much of our products, needed for energy production, needed for industry and transportation, and needed, of course, for the manufacture and driving of those huge, powerful pickup trucks. We're not connecting the dots. People are not seeing beyond the crisis of the moment to ask, how did we get here? And when we try to have conversations about it, sooner or later there is blame placed at someone else's feet. The result of pathological denial. It's not our fault. The blame game is so easy. In the story of the healing of the man born blind, the disciples begin the story with the blame game. Who sinned? This man or his parents? Someone had to be to blame. But Jesus shifts their focus away from that fruitless approach. Don't try to lay blame. Try to seek out the truth and the glory of the divine in this situation. He then, of course, works that healing that backs up his claim, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. All the discussions that follow in this long gospel reading are the attempts of the people to connect or to avoid connecting the dots, to draw the lines between the identity of Jesus, his power to heal, and the teachings of the religious authorities about seeing and perceiving and accepting the truth. The Pharisees in the story refused to connect the dots, whereas the man born blind now can see not only physically, but right through to the deep truth about Jesus and about his opponents in the religious hierarchy. The Pharisees were slandering Jesus, describing him as a nobody, an unknown, a sinner who should be given no standing. We've heard those kinds of things in our time. They're murderers, they're domestic terrorists, they're illegal immigrants, they're the worst of the worst. And the protesters are unlawfully interfering. And there are the same threats. If you disagree, you'll be put out of the synagogue, they said to the man and his parents. The people in this gospel story began to connect the dots correctly with that question, how could this man be a sinner and perform such divine acts of healing? And John adds that little detail, they were divided. When truth is spoken, we tend to get divided. There will always be resistance to the truth. The one born blind is able to see clearly, to connect the dots when he says to the Pharisees, here's an astonishing thing. You don't know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. He was now clear-eyed, practicing radical acceptance of the truth. This was John's clear summary of the whole story. Jesus, the one we follow, is no less than the divine power of healing walking among us in our flesh. To be in the presence of Jesus is to be in the presence of truth. And I would say it the other way around, to be in the presence of truth is to be in the presence of Jesus. There might be a cost. That enlightened and innocent man was expelled from the synagogue. The powers that be wanted to get rid of him as well as Jesus. But his testimony was as powerful as it was irrefutable. As we look at our world and our place in it, can we connect the dots? Can we see with the eyes of divine love and healing and see the truth that Jesus of Nazareth is the one to bring healing and love into our world? There's one other little detail of connecting dots this morning. It has to do with the anthem we're about to listen to. The words are in your bulletin. The Holocaust. This is from the back page of the music. The Holocaust is a stunning reminder of the tragic results of prejudice and hate toward other people. But it is also a reminder that hope, held firm, will eventually reign victorious over the greatest of odds. The following words were inscribed on the walls of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, where Jews were hiding from the Nazis during World War II. Hope was all they had to hold on to. Hope was their only bridge to a brighter tomorrow. We hear these words now.